maybe it's like a monthly call or something.
I got no commute, so I'm here.
Exactly.
I can know where to go. You have been very vocal as a leader within the community finance industry about the need for us as an industry to reconnect with our history coming out of the civil rights movement. You and I wrote a piece about that almost 4 years ago now, I think. And then last year you wrote out the racial tensions that led to riots in the 1960s or uprisings, and that despite some successes, the racial inequities still persisted. Now that, again, the national conversation has arrived here, do you see greater possibilities for that commitment to that legacy to be made deeper in our industry?
I think this is a huge opportunity for CDFIs. And I won't suggest that I have all the answers. I don't. But I think it's more a feeling and an observation followed by a feeling. And that observation is that we as an industry have done some incredibly great work. And I would observe that there is much more to be done. We continue to see the historic inequities that are happening in this country, and we have to do more to address that. And that means that every one of us is going to have to get out of our box, the box that we know, our own knitting, all those things, and we're going to have to evolve as organizations who sit with a ton of privilege around how we equitably, right, channel and move capital into communities where we ensure that there is dignity and agency remains in the community. All the privilege today sits at the top, right, with basically the asset providers, and we need to flip that and have the communities sit on top, right? And so thinking about ways that CDFIs can play a role in that and almost drive that, right, is a really significant opportunity, because I think we potentially give ourselves, and ourselves is very broadly defined, credit to really be able to reimagine. I actually think it's really hard for people to reimagine, to say that you can't flip the paradigm and for it to be able to work, right? To put the community on top and ensure that if the community sees value and benefits, then that should drive the way the capital should flow. We could continue to elevate that and do it at a scale that I think is meaningful, so that we can change the conversation, because today those messages, those themes are not being elevated to a national stage where we can really begin to change the way that finance and financial services operate in the U.S.
For Capital Impact Partners, as an example, what would you do differently were you to put the community at the top of, as you said, agency and decision-making and how capital flows?
So one of the ways that we are kind of rethinking kind of how we support communities really came about as a result of the alliance that we recently announced with CDC Small Business Finance. CDC Small Business Finance is the largest mission-based SBA lender in the country. And we are coming together initially to focus in 3 pilot cities, DC, Detroit, and LA, to think about ways that we can provide holistic community and economic development kind of centered around community. I would say the first thing that we're doing differently was a mindset shift, which was let's continue to stay in our own, focus on our own knitting, which is effectively community facilities, lending, and technical assistance surrounding that, to acknowledge and recognize that while those things are critically important in all communities, you need additional jobs to be created, and you need businesses, right, so that you can develop and maintain wealth in communities, specifically communities of color. And we believe that ownership, specifically small business ownership, was needed to partner with us to do that. And so one, it was acknowledgement that we're doing great work, but there's more that needs to be done. And then two, is a revelation that we didn't necessarily need to recreate the wheel, but we needed to do work in partnership with others who actually brought knowledge and skill sets that we didn't have. And so we are actually going through the process now where those three geographies that I described, we currently work in, but it's also acknowledging that we don't have all of the proximity required to really put the community up front. And so we're going to go through an effort of making sure that we can hear from the community, which is going to be probably a very different group of stakeholders than we have traditionally worked with, to really make sure that we are aligning around the community's interests. And I think secondarily, we are already acknowledging that we need to think differently about how we deliver capital to the community, again, in the ways that they need it, which might look different than the way that we are currently providing it today. And then the last thing I'd just say is, in terms of how we go to market, I think traditionally, and I understand why it's the case, we develop a product and we begin to shop that product in the places that we work. And in this case, it's an acknowledgement that all three of those markets are vastly different. And the ways that we're going to support communities in those three efforts might look very different. And we need to be prepared for that, because again, success is ultimately should be defined by the community, not by us.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think people who don't know our industry very well might say, well, what do you mean it's a mindset shift to put communities first? You have community in the title of your industry. We're the community development finance industry. Isn't that what you've always done? So what would be different in that mindset shift?
There's a couple things that are different in the mindset shift. I think one, we absolutely have engaged the communities in the specific sectors in which we work. We lend and work with a lot of charter school operators, fairly qualified healthcare center operators, and I'll say affordable housing developers. And we actively engage with them and folks within the community around those specific areas. But I think what we're trying to do now is to take 2 steps back and look at the community writ large around what is needed, inclusive of those things, to make sure that the community has the supports that it needs to be able to thrive, and not just with a very specific vantage point towards affordable housing and preservation of affordable housing, or ensuring that quality healthcare and education exists within that community. There are a variety of other factors that are needed and supports that are needed, and we're trying to think about ways that we can provide a holistic cadre of tools that we can help communities prosper. And so I think, to me, it's really taking 2 steps back and looking holistically at the problem and not being overly prescriptive in terms of, here are the solutions that I can provide you, X, Y, Z community.
You talked about what sounds like a really inspiring leadership opportunity to shift how your organization operates, to place communities first, and to really show up in response to what the community needs, rather than with a product that you have developed elsewhere that you are trying to place. What are the challenges in putting that mindset shift into practice for you as a leader?
I think it's just really important to continue to help the team in particular understand the vision, one, and then two, really understand the how and how they will fit into this. When you talk about putting the community first, I think people get really concerned about, but I don't know what that's going to be. And I don't know, whatever they say, that I can actually be that for them. And how can we make a business out of it if everything is different? And I think that those are valid questions, but it's not, but I think the how matters here. And the how really, initially to me, gets to a variety of kind of points. One in which is around continuing to add more people under the tent who can help be partners with us. Again, coming up with something that a broad strategy that is articulated by the community, and we are just tools to help accelerate exactly what they want to have happen, right? So it's flipping that and recognizing that we are a mere support function to the communities and not the opposite. And so I think that's one. I think the other part is really thinking about technology and thinking about ways that we can leverage technology and ways to link those partners together so it can be seamless to the community as well. You asked a question earlier around meeting the moment. I think we have to recognize where we are as an industry. And I think we are at a really interesting inflection point where there is a possibility for significant capital, potentially public sector capital, to support CDFIs. And there's going to be a question around, well, what should we be doing with it? And if we don't have the right mentality, we're going to continue to just do what we've always been doing and just do more of it and more frequently. But I would posit that we should pause and think about if that's the right solution.